Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forney Now, the podcast where we discuss city initiatives, topics, and more. I'm Zach Smith, your host and the communications director for the city of Forney. Today, we have something truly exciting to discuss. Our Parks and Open Spaces Master Plan is getting a makeover, and we have our Parks Director, Kyle Rouvaldt, joining me. Kyle, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Zach.
So first off, Kyle, could you give kind of more of a background about yourself and the Forney Parks and Recreation Department?
Sure. Like you said, my name is Kyle Rouvaldt. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the city of Forney. My department is responsible for basically all of the maintenance within the park system in the city of Forney. I have been the Parks and Recreation Director for almost 4 years. Before that, I was the Public Information Officer for the city, something that you're well versed in. And then I was in that position for 5 years. And before that, I was in a similar communications role with the town of Flower Mound for 3 years.
Gotcha. So kind of a pretty diverse backgrounds. And, obviously your department also specializes in events and things like that. And I'm sure members of the community are really familiar with those. So the Parks Master Plan was last done in 2014, I believe. And now it's getting updated. So what kind of goes all into updating a master plan? Why does the city do that?
Yeah, so what you hinted on, the last master plan was completed in 2014. So you can imagine since then how much the landscape in and around the city of Forney has changed. But basically, a Parks and Recreation Master Plan is a comprehensive long-range strategy for the creation, optimization, maintenance of a community's assets within the park system. It doesn't necessarily focus on one particular park, but instead offers a bird's eye view of all the community's parks, recreation landscape, both today and for the next decade. I know that's kind of what we aim for when you're doing a master plan, is looking at the next 10 years. While this will be a standalone master plan within the park system, we just completed the city's master plan, so it will fold in and roll in and take a lot of the same concepts. So the city stays consistent. But what goes into updating the plan, in my opinion, updating the plan revolves really around 5 key concepts: engaging the community, engaging the stakeholders, examining current assets, determining a focus area, and creating a plan.
Gotcha. So you said creating a plan. Does that plan include what things are offered by your department, or just kind of the expansion of city parks, or is it kind of a little bit of both?
I think the plan is the last step in the process. And that's kind of where you envision. I've learned that throughout the years, there's often a large gap between the park and recreation system that a community wants and then the one that you currently have. The plan basically tries to get you from point A to point B. And that's through the engagement of the community, the stakeholders, and examining currently what you have. I think the biggest and most important aspect in this is engaging the community, hearing from residents what they want, what they need in a park system, what's important to them. We can't develop a plan without input.
Right. And I'm sure you get a lot of input probably on a daily basis of what people would like to see and what they want. What are some things that you see? What's like a common theme as far as like what people ask about, or kind of like what you envision?
I think right now, one of the most often topics that when somebody calls that we discuss is pickleball courts and expanded tennis courts. I know right now across the country, pickleball is exploding. I mean, they have professional tour now, and it was just, a novice kind of sport, it seems like 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
So the ascension in that has grown exponentially. I think COVID had a big impact on sports like tennis and golf that don't necessarily have to have a team aspect. It could have been individual space to play. So it's not really not too shocking to see those sports kind of just skyrocket in popularity. But yeah, that's one that we get calls about all the time is just increased tennis and pickleball space. So that's something that we're prepared for this plan. One thing that this plan will address.
Completely understood. Sometimes I see those comments as well. People are always asking about the pickleball, which I get it. It's definitely popular. So the city chose Park Hill to kind of conduct this master plan for the city and for the Forney Parks Department. Could you just give a little bit of overground? What is Park Hill? What is that? What do they specialize in, and kind of what's their role in all this?
Park Hill, they are a firm that specializes in master plans along with other engineering projects. They did the previous plan in 2014 and also helped construct community park. So they have a lot of knowledge and great history with the city of Forney. One of their responsibilities is basically collecting the data from all the surveys, all the one-on-one conversations had at two of the open houses that we had, and basically putting them in a plan that isn't just a plan. One of the things when we were looking at firms is I want a firm that can take all of the input, but then have it give the city a roadmap on how to get from point A to point B. I'm not focused on passing a large bond because I don't want to be tied down to that. I want to be able to have a plan that we can use funds from year to year, through projects, CIP projects, or through an annual budgeting process to increase the parks and not rely on a bond and if it passes or doesn't pass. I think it's our responsibility to use the funds that we already have to try to increase the recreational activities, increase the sports that we have, and then take care of the things that we already have, that we currently have. And that's another thing that goes in this plan is, what do you have? What is the status of the items and everything that you currently have, and how you can build on that and maintain what you have. And yeah.
How does our, you mentioned kind of, planning and some of the growth, like how does our growth impact that? Does that present a challenge for you guys?
I think that is probably the hardest challenge that we have in a department is their growth. I know one of the funny things that we always talk about is I hear people always talk about, the ISC is growing, all the schools that's being built. Well, those kids are playing youth sports somewhere. So it's a, very, very the same growth that we are experiencing both inside and outside the city in regards to the school district, the kids. Our youth sports associations are facing the same struggle. I know just based on scheduling for instance, when I first started as a parks recreation director, the youth soccer leagues games would kind of start at 9 and then by about noon they would teeter off. And now you're seeing games till 5 and 6 p.m. just because there are so many kids playing. And it's by no fault of the city's own, but the city of Forney and our parks and recreation staff are where a majority of the kids in Kaufman County and even Sunnyvale, even Dallas County, come and play. So we're kind of the beacon for where everybody comes and plays sports, youth sports, and because we do have the resources. So that is I'm sorry to interrupt. That's the main challenge, and how to decipher residents and community members within the plan itself. I know that was another topic that we talked about with Park Hill is and for the importance of me is I want to have the input from community members, those that don't live in the city, but we need to focus on the residents and what they're asking for and what their needs and what their wants are. Because if we do ever decide to go out for a bond in the future, they're the ones that we're going to have to sell the plan to. So we want to obviously prioritize their wants and needs and vision.
Right. I was just going to say, if for folks that aren't aware or don't have kiddos in sports, it is really insane to go to Forney Community Park on a Saturday morning when there's soccer.
I think one of the so when I first started over there, I didn't. My daughter was 2, so she hadn't started soccer yet. And the first Saturday that we showed up at the park and saw all the cars there, I was kind of blown away. And I know a couple times when we have a lot of council members that might not have kids that age, and they're at the park, and I'll get a text or a phone call and say, "Hey, what's going on in the park today? There's traffic all along 548," and I'll look and I'll kind of be like, I don't think there's anything. It's just soccer or a tournament. So there is, on Saturdays 548 and 6041 kind of become a very, very crowded space because of the soccer and all the youth activities that we have going along.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good problem in a way, because at least people are involved and want to get their kids involved in sports. But anyway, going back to the master plan, how long is this process? Kind of, what's the timeline for a project like this to re-update a plan?
Anywhere from 8 to 10 months is what we're looking at. I know I'm extremely focused on getting feedback and input from both stakeholders and residents. But like I said earlier, the one thing that I stress the most is I want a plan and a roadmap on how to get there without, and I said it before, but I don't want to be tied down to a bond, because I think that could be an easy, something that somebody can easily punt or kick the can down the road and just say, oh, we're tied down to this bond, or if it passes or not. And instead, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's being a steward of taxpayer dollars. I think that I want to plan, okay, here's, I go to Park Hill and I say, hey, here's my budget for this fiscal year. This is where I'm looking at it, what my budget will be in 10 years. What's a good plan based on the growth of the leagues? I mean, we provided numbers from the last 10 years of the sports leagues of each one. And they're going in, looking at the growth, looking at how my budget's growing, looking at field conditions, putting that all in and saying, this is what you need to do to be at least on the curve. I think it'd be kind of silly to look and say, this plan is going to provide in 10 years, we're going to be ahead of the curve. I think the growth at this point is just so exponentially high that we will never be ahead of the growth. If we're being realistic, we're just trying to, stay somewhat in line with the growth projections. So, and that's hard. I think if you look at the I know, Zach, you referenced the 2014 study. In that study, I believe the projected population for 2035 in Forney, we've already hit. So if you're just looking at things like that and how far we are behind, it's pretty shocking. But we're here and we're hoping this plan can get us on the path to where we need to be. Not saying it's going to get us there, but at least on the right track, just to kind of handle the growth the best way we can.
Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned community feedback and input. There's a survey available. We will make that available and link that to this podcast. It's also available on our Parks and Recreation Facebook page, where I encourage you to follow along. You can stay up to date with other news and event information there. Kyle, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, I know we talk about kind of what the vision is for the future, and I definitely think project wise, we would like to replace Mulberry with some sort of new baseball complex. Mulberry is very dated, and basically became a bowl that just holds water, and we're constantly trying to maintain that. But I think that we do have around 66 acres of dedicated parkland on the north side of town. So some sort of community park on the north side would be fantastic. And then we talked about calls and responses and requests we get internally from staff directly, not from Facebook comments or Twitter mentions, but in any sort of recreation center. I know that's a larger scale item,
Right.
and we had one in Flower Mound that was pretty successful. But yeah, and those are the things that we get calls on, and what we have planned for the future. But no, I think that's it. And like you said, I'm really excited and just stress the importance of people going to fill out the survey that's online and provide your input. All of the responses are equally as important. So the more we get, the better the plan will be in the end.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Kyle. I appreciate it. I think the update of the parks plan, especially with the city's growth and all the young families, and just in the involvement of sports and events and everything like that, is really exciting, and we're looking forward to see how it turns out. So, thank you, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Forney Now. Stay tuned for more exciting stories and updates. Until next time.